Few seconds and we will get going. Okay, I think we will start. See, more and more are still joining, but they will just join during our conversation. So, hello and welcome to our webinar about the topic How to Create Data-Driven Mindset in an Organization, hosted by Elevation. My name is Karin. I'm the General Manager of Elevation in Europe, and I will moderate our conversation with our three wonderful, wonderful panelists, which I know you all came to hear, and we will introduce just shortly. This webinar is a part of our webinar series with topics around learning and development, HR, and everything around in-demand skills, especially data and how data enhances the company growth. So for those who don't know us yet, we at Elevation help solve the talent shortage by offering an academy as a service for companies to upskill and reskill current employees and also to train to hire new ones. We work with a variety of companies and industries, from traditional companies to the most advanced tech companies, and we offer trainings in different verticals and different topics. Data, definitely one of them. Now, if you're interested in learning more about Elevation's offering and our future webinars, we invite you to follow us on LinkedIn or on our website, elevation.ac. We are also very happy to receive requests, ideas, topics that interest you, interest the community around us. So feel free to reach out to us. I'll write my email and also LinkedIn in the chat below in a bit. So actually also this webinar, it came to life following the requests of our customers who are looking into different ways to support and to train their employees and to become more data-driven with the relevant skills and to know what these skills are and to train them with these most up-to-date skills. So feel free to contact me or my team with any topic suggestions or if you're interested maybe to speak in one of our future webinars. But now let's dive into the actual reason we are here. So becoming or maintaining a data-driven culture in teams is a key factor for the growth and success of the organization. I think we'll take this as a given. I think we are beyond the phase that we need to argue about that. We know it is so. But today we will hear from our three panelists from three very different angles about their experience. We will discuss why data fuels growth and the benefits of being data-driven, and how to establish this culture and what challenges we meet on the way. Now, during the webinar, feel free to ask questions to the panelists using the Q&A button you will see here below, not the chat, but the Q&A. And we will dedicate the last minutes of the webinar for your questions. And we will also have a few questions to you using a poll during the webinar, to you, the audience. So help us with that and answer the questions. And it's a good tool to get to know you best. Now let's start with a short introduction of our panelists. I'd like to ask you to shortly introduce yourselves and the company you work for. Maybe say just in a sentence, what does being data-driven mean to you? Whoever wants to start.
Okay, let me go first. Hi everyone, this is Aysegul from Istanbul. So I'm the head of people analytics for Ericsson region, Middle East and Africa. And yeah, what data-driven means to me is using data in all kind of decisions, basically.
Thank you.
Hi, I'm Ebony Morczinek. I'm the CEO Europe for Marley Spoon. It's a global meal kit provider. Being data-driven is using data to inform every decision, where every single action is a strategic choice using the best available insight.
Hello, my name is Liudmila, and I'm head of consulting operations with BASF, a global chemical company. For me, being data-driven is a part of mindset and mentality, which allows our organizations to perform at their best.
Great. So three different, so very similar, but still different, a bit different answers, which is great to see how we look at it also differently. Ebony, I'll start with you. You have a very vast background in verticals, but also in positions. And you started off, if I remember correctly, at the beginning of your career as an investment bank analyst, and you went through private equity and mergers, acquisitions, finance, C-level management in various leading global organizations. Now, when looking at all your experience in the various companies, tell us, how can we really create value from being data-driven? And if you could share with us how you personally incorporate data in your business processes and your business decisions.
Well, first of all, thanks for pointing out my age. I think
I didn't say anything.
I'm kidding. I think it's important to note that I did start off in a very data-driven position. So I started in my early career as an analyst, analyzing data from and for the capital markets. And so even before I was a decision maker myself, I was helping and watching other people use data to make decisions. So that very much influenced, I think, of course, my career trajectory, but also how I think about value creation and data. When we use data across our organization to discover new insights or to guide business strategy, that's where we create value. We create value from data when we ignite innovation and we redefine how we achieve success. So coming from that, to answer the second part of your question, incorporating data into my own business processes and my own decisions, for me, data is a strategic asset. So there are specific metrics that I look at least on a weekly basis using dashboards. I observe, with the absolute figures, I look at trends, I ask myself questions about whether this is good, this is bad, is this improving, is it deteriorating? And so, I also have meetings where all we do is look at metrics to identify issues, to find the root causes of those issues and to implement corrective actions.
I think we'll dive into that also later in our conversation, but thank you for that. Liudmila, and I'm not mentioning ages, I'm not mentioning years, but I will say that you also have quite a track record with many years in line management roles, and especially in strategic consulting field, and also in operations. Now, as a consultant, you typically came across many various types of companies and different states of data maturity in these companies. Now, we all know, and we talked about it, that taking decisions based on data will probably be the better ones, but maybe you can share with us examples from the business, from your experience, about decisions that were based on data, but maybe were counterintuitive, were not so obvious.
Absolutely. So typically, maybe just to start a little bit one step back by asking the question, when is typically consulting required? Consulting is often the point of required at the point of time when there is a high volatility, high level of uncertainty, and a lot of unknown factors. This is typically where gut feeling stops working so well, and traditional organizations see difficulties in making good decisions. To give you a very specific example, I thought about one post-merger integration process, which was addressing the merger of the organizations after a merger of two companies. And the original idea was to have a full-fledged integration, aiming to reduce complexity, focus on harvesting synergies. However, the data, and it required a fairly thorough analysis of data, was showing very clearly that the two organizations had very different approaches to the sales process and customer interactions, which meant in the end that a full-fledged integration would have actually diminished the value. So rather, a very diversified approach was required to this specific post-merger integration process. So this is something that was very easy to explain, but not so easy to find, because the complexity of the markets was driving this decision so much, and it was not visible without digging deep into the data.
I see. So only after digging deeper into it, you actually understood that this counterintuitive decision or counterintuitive strategic steps is the right one in this specific case.
Absolutely. And typically, data is something that helps you make better decisions as soon as the complexity grows. The higher the complexity, the more people need to reduce it by using easily digestible methods such as dashboards, ways to visualize it, ways to approach it in a structured and repetitive way.
Right. Thank you. I think we will hear the word dashboards and reports quite a lot in the next minutes. Aysegul, we'll go to you. You have a lot of years of experience in management HR roles. Many years at Ericsson, if I remember correctly, something around 15. And a few of your last roles were in people analytics. Now, can you explain this combination? Because traditionally we do not really connect HR positions to analytics. So can you explain to us and give us an insight to your world?
Sure. Yeah, I mean, traditionally, analytics was not a part of major HR functions, as you said, but in the last couple of years, starting actually from 10 years before, we start seeing more people analytics, like called HR analytics or workforce analytics in different ways. But this started to become one of the top priorities in HR in most of the organizations. I mean, in any survey, we were seeing the top skills required, in the next years is coming up as people analytics. And this is really obvious because now, I mean, we manage people in HR, right? We support leaders in the organization to take people decisions to improve business results, right? I mean, this is the ultimate aim, and data has to support it. So, I mean, I should say data management was there all the time because, you had to do some kind of reporting anyways, I mean, basic reporting was there in HR from the beginning, but in the recent years, we have seen really advancement in this area. Companies started to invest a lot into the tools, processes, and the people analytics functions. So in Ericsson as well, we started this journey about 8 years ago. Our function was formed globally, and we had teams everywhere in all the regions globally to build the foundation and start supporting the organization with people data.
Interesting. So already 8 years ago, you created at Ericsson this people analytics team who really looks at data, looks at numbers, takes decision or HR decisions based on the data.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, we would like to get to know our audience a little bit better and to better understand also where the organizations you come from. So I'll activate the poll now, and I would like to hear from you, and we would like to ask you to take a second to look at the question, which is, would you describe your organization as data-driven? And one of the answers is definitely. We nurture a data-driven culture and everyone is on board. Or somewhat data-driven, only in the technical and financial departments. Or in a way, yes, we get data reports from the analysts every once in a while. Or no, our organization still has a way to go. We give it another few seconds for you to vote what is applicable to you. It's anonymous. Don't worry, we're not gonna get back to to your organization, and we don't see who voted what. We just want to get a feeling of who is in the audience and the organizations you come from. Great. So for the ones who didn't still press, I'll give you another 10 seconds, and then we will end the poll. So let's see the results. So the results are most of you, so 35% of the audience say somewhat data-driven, only the technical and financial departments. This is maybe also very much connected to what we discussed about HR, which maybe not always is so technical. Data driven, which is not technical, but also not necessarily data driven. Ebony will talk about it also because I know also at Marley Spoon there are many other departments that are not necessarily very analytical. Then the rest, or 27% say no, our organization still has a way to go. Okay, so even today, we still have organizations who still have a long way to go. We all know data is important. We all know that being data-driven will bring better results, but we still have a long, long way to go. 23% say, in a way, yes, we get data reports from the analysts every once in a while. And 15% say, yes, definitely, we nurture a data-driven culture and everyone is on board. Great, thank you for everybody who participated. So back to and I think it also very much connects to the answers of the audience. Aysegul, back to you and to organizational development, learning and development, HR. So you say in your eyes it has to be data driven. So can you give us maybe some keys to success, or to say if again you think it is essential to understand analytics in order to stay relevant in HR in the next 5 to 10 years?
Yeah, absolutely. Analytics is a key skill for HR professionals. And it's, when we say analytical, I think it has two major parts. One is about data literacy, right? The people must be able to read, understand, interpret data for the units, for the leaders to be supported in that. And second is about, I think, translation into insights and action. Because, just looking at the data doesn't mean anything if you don't take action over that. So I believe those two major skills that are really needed for the HR teams. Of course, people analytics functions will help in terms of the more advanced capabilities, like now data science mostly we see in developed organizations that are doing advanced level of analytics statistics for the data. So HR teams don't have to be data scientists, of course. It's not something to be afraid of, I should say, for the HR teams. But I think it's essential to understand, interpret, and make use of it. So, I mean, the organizations that are investing in this area see the benefits. And we also seen the improvements over the years in Ericsson. Once we get, we develop these kind of skills in the organization, HR teams are better, able to support their leaders with more insights and making informed decisions about their people.
So we can relax. We don't, like, not all the HR, when you have quite a few HR, organizational development and L&D in the audience here. So you say they can lean back, they can relax. They don't have to be data scientists, but you think understanding or having a better, maybe call them data informed or data literate, or really understanding maybe dashboards. This is what you would suggest everybody in HR should know, because it will benefit them.
Exactly, and it's now, of course, it's increasing, but still, I can say it's a rare skill. So the people who have these kind of skills will definitely have an impact and a benefit, personally as well. Investing time and effort into these kind of skills and capabilities.
Yeah, I think it's also very interesting to look at the benefit of not only of the organization, but also of the individual. As you said, like the individual person, the employee himself or herself will benefit from, from having these skills, which obviously will also enhance the performance of the organization. I think this is maybe one thing we sometimes need to work on, to really have this understanding of why is it, what do I have from it, or what is, why is it important for me as an individual? But we'll talk maybe about challenges a bit later. But back to people that are not necessarily analysts, not necessarily data, or from their position should be data driven. Ebony, you are a CEO of a company that also has many creative talents, and not only analysts and developers. So you have photographers, you have nutritionists, you have chefs who maybe are even the core, the product of your company. And I know that also the core value of Marley Spoon is we don't, or one of the core values is we don't care about opinions, we care about data. So can you give maybe examples of what it means to be data driven for a non-analytical team or a person? And also, how do you support these teams, and how do you create this data driven culture throughout the entire organization?
Yeah, I think, look, it's especially important for creative teams to use data to drive their decisions. An example is taste. How do you quantify something if something tastes good? How do you define whether something tastes better than it did last week? And by definition, something like taste is subjective, but we do want to measure how our customers experience taste from our recipes. And so, having an objective metric like a dish rating stops endless discussions. It gives teams something to focus on. The team can test flavors and understand where taste can be improved, and that would have been almost impossible without having an objective metric. And so, having something objective like that, you can track the development and continuously improve. And so in order to support creative teams with a data-driven mindset, the first thing we do is we clearly define what are the key performance metrics, the KPIs, right? Most people probably have heard about them, but maybe you hadn't thought that you can apply that to a creative discipline. Secondly, you can't use data to drive every action if you don't have access to the data and to tools that are easy to use. Aysegul said, as she said, you don't want to people don't need to be professors of data in order to use the tools. So it should be something user-friendly. And so we have to democratize this access to data. And so you create, thirdly, you have to provide training on what data is and the tools that are used in the company to store and analyze data. And so culture is created really when it's lived. So if you want to have a data-driven culture, you have to use data as part of your everyday routine for every team member, from the exec level to your student interns.
I love that, and I love that you really bring everybody on board. In, as you say, have metrics that everybody can understand, and they're very clear or objective, as you say, and just clear KPIs, and even for the ones who are not the analysts or the most have technical maybe or financial backgrounds. I love that, and I also love that you saying that you are you don't take it as a given that they know it, because you train them and you explain to them what it actually is and what is a KPI, how do you measure a KPI, what is a KPI, what isn't it, really explaining and giving them training on it, which I think makes a lot of sense. Liudmila, I think your teams and in consulting, in operations, I think data is your day-to-day and the team's day-to-day, and I think most of the people also come from such a background. But how do you, as a company, maybe support your teams in staying ahead of this curve and knowing all the newest trends and tools?
So I think this needs to be answered a little bit broadly rather than just focusing on pure consulting unit, because it's fairly small unit. It doesn't affect the whole of the company. But we have been doing a lot of projects and initiatives where we needed to roll out certain, even cultural aspects into the larger teams, which involve thousands of people. And for example, one of the ways of doing that is actually making data less complex by focusing on certain easy access to data. one of the troubles of large organizations is that there is so much data, but it is not aligned, it is not centralized, and it is very often guarded. So one of the ways of approaching that is creating certain standards. And here we speak about data master sets or any other centralized ways of storing such data, as well as central data lakes that allows different part of organizations accessing similar data in a similar way. That allows organizations in many fields to be able to make that data easily usable for people not trained in being data analysts. So to give you a very simple example, when we have been doing the large reorganization in our organization, and there was a global service unit built. And one of the key challenges was to create a service mindset for many thousands of people working in this service unit. There was indeed one of the elements of handling this, and of course it is not the only one, but it is one of them, was to define several but very relevant KPIs, very few, they should be less than a handful, and make them accessible to every single team member, and then regularly follow on them in team discussions on all levels. That way they become being lived. So this is regarding the effect of using data-driven mindset in large organizations where you not always have people who are initially trained to work with data. How to stay ahead of the curve, how to know the newest trends and tools, how to make them known in large organization. Here, the approach is often need to be about reducing the complexity. There are so many tools right now. And knowing 5 different tools does not necessarily help organization, rather than just focusing on 1 or maybe 2 tools that suits this specific organization best and training people on using those tools proficiently. So this is one of the cases where organizations have to deliberately focus on certain tools in order to make them usable for members within the organization. And by the way, thank you so much to our listeners who noted regarding my mic. I try to adjust it, so hopefully now you can hear me better. Thank you.
By the way, also thank you for the questions coming in. We are collecting them and we will ask them at the end of the session. So if you have more questions, we already have quite a few, but if you have more, feel free to send them in the Q&A here below. Aysegul, I know that you as an HR organization are supporting the leaders and the people managers in becoming more data driven. You give them some tools, you give them support. Can you share with us which support you're giving them to help them to also be data driven and really understand the data better?
Yeah. So actually, there are so many reports and dashboards that we are working on. But again, I mean, I think Liudmila mentioned there is so many reports which then dilutes the focus in certain cases. So we need to make it also simpler for the leaders. We try to do more targeted dashboards relevant to them to use for their people decisions. And of course, it's a journey, you know, it's also a mindset change. I mean, bringing some kind of dashboards into a meeting doesn't make you data driven. You need to, learn how to work with those and also drive insights and actions out of it, as I said. So it requires time and effort from both HR and the leader side. One thing that's made a difference in our case is actually providing real-time data for the line managers, giving the access to them directly, rather than HR preparing reports on their requests, because it's mostly, I mean, daily the data is changing and it's becoming outdated, and there are so many slides, PowerPoints that giving makes no sense to them. So it was globally, actually. Globally, we went to all line managers and asked them what are the key data that you need related to your people to support you. So these kind of metrics are identified and a dashboard is created, which is available for managers. So they can go there and they can get today's real-time data. And they are able to see the history as well as in certain cases what can happen, looking at the past trends. So it allows them to see, in different levels. Like it can be the performance, it can be salaries, the situation of your team, so that you can review and make your decisions. Like if you are working on a salary review process, you can look at all this data and decide how you want to spend your budget. So this made a difference when we really gave this access to the managers to be able to reach their data for their teams, which is correct, reliable, and real time.
So
And
you
sorry, and continuous training is there, training HR leaders. Again, we just can't say, okay, data is there and you can check. HR has to be there to support and guide them, so that they align into this way of data driven ways of working while taking people decisions.
So I love that you actually say we support them in two ways. We provide them with the dashboards they need. So we simplify, so they see it, we visualize and we simplify it with dashboards. They know, it's easy to read. All the information is there to take decisions upon. But we also don't take for granted that they know how to read these dashboards. We actually train them and tell them what they can do and what they can read out of the dashboards, and maybe specific metrics that are relevant maybe in leading teams. So the combination of two, I think this is fantastic. And again, we'll go maybe back to our audience. We'd love to hear about your organizations again and how your organization supports you. So let me activate the next poll, and the question, I think it did it work? I don't know. Can you see the screen? Yes, fantastic. So does your organization support the employees in being data driven? And the answers are no. We are simply expected to be fact driven. Yes, we receive regular reports and dashboards. Yes, we get regular trainings on data tools and data literacy. Or yes, we have access to data, we receive the reports and get ongoing trainings. Let's see what our audience says. I'll give it a few more seconds for you to vote. Very interesting. I think only I can see the answers now, so stay tuned for the results. Maybe a few more seconds. Okay, I will end the poll now and share the results. Interesting. So 38% say no, we are simply expected to be fact-driven. I think, this is maybe oftentimes the case. Like now we all know data is important, we should look into the numbers, but not always the companies really support us in training, in providing, what does that actually mean? 33% say yes, we receive regular reports and dashboards. 17% say we get regular trainings on data tools and literacy, and only 13% say yes, we also have the access to the data, we receive the reports, and we also get the ongoing trainings. Interesting. Okay. So maybe let's talk about your organizations and the day-to-day. So what are maybe small examples that we spoke about a few, we spoke about dashboards, we spoke about other things, but maybe some more examples that create this data-driven environment and this culture in your organizations. Maybe the three of you can share best practices and something that the audience can really take home with and start implementing right away.
So, there's literally no meeting where we don't incorporate data into the conversation, right? Why? Because I find when analysis takes place, there's a richer discussion. You're talking, everyone has the same context. And so, just to give some small examples, I have a weekly meeting with my direct reports. And we do exactly as Liudmila mentioned, we focus at that level, a senior level, we talk about a few KPIs that everyone understands and that are broad across the business. And we look at how we're performing. We talk about if there are any trends that disturb us. When it comes to maybe the monthly business reviews, we benchmark very much against targets. This is where we want to be. This is where we are. How do we get there? And so those are just a couple examples of how, in the day-to-day interaction within the business, we use data.
Yeah, in our case too, I mean, when a HRBP has a meeting with the leader, I think the data is there. When they talk about an employee, especially, you talk about data. You talk about the history for that employee, so it's always there. And in people analytics, we are trying to support that with tools and processes, as I said, to get the reliable data from the tools that we have. So data is there in all the discussions. We want to have that. We want to have fact-based decisions in all kind of people management issues. And we also we saw that showing some striking numbers also impacts the organization, right? Like, did you know kind of stuff, because HR mostly follows up completion rates in the organization, right? I mean, we want performance ratings to be done. We want those salary reviews to be done in the according to the deadline. So that kind of push mechanism is not really nice, and in HR we don't want to do that either. But showing those kind of data to the organization is more useful rather than sending reminders to complete or reach your deadline. So I think this is something that worked for us. And in any case, in anything where you want to create an attention of the leaders in the organization or employees, sharing those big numbers, different striking numbers, really impacts the understanding and attention.
I would take the time to ask our audience another question, another poll, and I think it's very much connected to the answer that you gave earlier about some of you not being so data driven, and the question is, what can you see the poll now? Is it visible? Wonderful. So what does your organization actually lack in terms of data literacy? So what could your company do a little bit better? Is it management attention and focus on becoming data-driven? Is it data-driven decision-making, so business decisions will be supported by data, not just a hunch? Or is it a common language where all employees use the same professional terms and KPIs? The technology maybe, or nothing because your company is 100% data-driven? Let's see yeah, I get that feedback. I got the feedback that multiple choices could be nice. Okay, noted. But let's try to concentrate on one. And if you have to choose a few because your organization lacks quite a few things, then okay. I'm gonna end the poll now. So if somebody wants to press, this is the time. Good. Let's see. So most of you, 33%, says management attention and focus on becoming data-driven. So actually, the answer lies in management, which is very interesting. And I think, yeah, culture and management and all of that, and walking the talk is probably always an important thing. 24% data-driven decision-making, business decisions will be supported by data, not just a hunch. And 90% say both a common language where all employees use the same professional terms and KPIs, and 19% also say the supporting technology. Interesting. But it's interesting that it's not the technology. Like most of you don't say it's the technology we don't have. It's actually the culture we're missing, or the guidance, the management guidance we are missing, which is interesting. Liudmila, we're happy you're back with us. You had some technical issues, but you're back, so that's great. Maybe another tips from your side, from the consultancy point of view. What are these small things that we can really incorporate in our day-to-day, or what do you do in your day-to-day that really keeps up this data-driven culture?
So what I typically both do for my own teams and also use quite a lot when we are working with our internal customers is finding ways of incorporating the ways to use the data on regular basis. So it can be some dashboard that helps you with the daily or weekly planning process. For example, I will just try to bring in a couple of examples from different elements and different approaches of using the data. So maybe from HR perspective, we've been talking about this area quite a bit today because it is something where using data is not always 100% intuitive. But for example, if we are planning trainings, that's an awesome way of using data, of managing the demand on a fairly regular basis. Then if we're looking at the larger scale, if we're trying to manage the KPIs, manage the organization and its culture, think about current challenge of having diverse organizations. This is something that leadership teams can look at on a regular basis and review whether their recruiting processes actually support that what they're trying to achieve in terms of outcome of the diversity. And it is not something that you can do without incorporating regular data reviews into the business and management processes. Because once it comes to people, recruiting processes require a very long time frame that you have to plan ahead of the curve. So it is necessarily to be proactive. It is necessary to start acting before the problem actually arrives. Maybe from totally different way, something creative. If you're thinking about the day-to-day business of a branding agency, you would be surprised how much of that is actually driven by the data. It is very creative area, and yet in the end, it is all about target groups. It is about measuring the responses of people to certain triggers that are being incorporated into the messages. So I hope those are just few examples from the areas which are not typical technical areas driven by KPIs.
Thank you for that. And it's nice. It's interesting to see different, how you use data in your day-to-day. And maybe a final question before we go to the Q&A. And we have seen that some of the participants of the audience come from organizations that are on their way to becoming more and more data-driven. So maybe you can suggest what can an organization or a team leader do tomorrow in order to become more data-driven? Like really a quick, something that is not too complicated, is not, doesn't require, implementing new software or something like that, but something that one can take home and say, okay, if I do this, it will be the first step to becoming more data-driven. Aysegul, we cannot hear you.
And for me, it's really investing some time. Is that okay now? Can you hear now?
Now we hear you.
Okay. Well, for me, it's really investing some personal time in this area, developing your capabilities and skills. And now, so many, there are free online courses even, that we can reach. There are so many material about this topic. I think we really need to invest some time in taking related courses ourselves to grow our own capabilities in this area. And especially if there are any HR attendees here, I would strongly recommend them to invest some time into this, because it's very we tend to just delay or forget things. Just start now and go and check what kind of material is available there. And once you are more interested, maybe then so many training companies are there internally, externally, they can search for some options like that. But I would say really search and read, because analytics capability really develops by practice as well. It's not, and we cannot just sit and wait someone to come to us and explain what it's about and what you need to do about it, right? And we need to develop our own data literacy. So I would suggest to invest time in this.
So investing time in learning and training maybe the teams in topics around data literacy to get to know better, and then enhance the learning or dive deeper into what is relevant to each and everyone. Thank you.
So my take on this would be to look into the areas where participants believe they have not been using data and have been rather using gut feeling and experience to make decisions, and just trying to identify whether some of those decisions could be improved by using the data available. Being aware of the areas that can be improved is typically the first step to improvement.
I'm asking myself, how easy is it? Because it's something, it's something that has been done for probably quite a while. How easy is it for me to identify where these important spots are, where I should rather maybe use data instead of the way we've been doing it for the past X years?
Typically for me, such areas are the ones where I know immediately the answer because I have been doing it already very often. And in many cases, I can improve myself exactly in those areas, because just using the existing set of instruments works as long as the conditions in which the instruments are being used are the same. And as soon as conditions change, taking the same actions tend to lead to lesser results than before.
So it's maybe a good trick. So if I know the answer to the question without looking into data, that's probably where I should look into data and check myself. Okay, Ebony, what would you suggest? What should one do in order to become more data-driven tomorrow morning?
Well, I think, your poll identified one thing: management, right? So I think what we as managers can do is provide lots of examples across the organization of people using data to arrive at solutions to their problems or driving insights. And also, it is very important to have a psychologically safe environment where people feel like they can jump in and try new things and learn and maybe make mistakes on the way. Without team members feeling safe enough to learn and experiment, management can talk all day about data. If people don't feel comfortable venturing into the unknown, then it won't happen.
Thank you. And I would also maybe add what you said before, that starting, this back to the culture, like starting every meeting with, let's look at the data. Maybe again, back to management, back to culture. Maybe that's also something that's easily done, just looking, just making a common practice. So every meeting we start with looking at this dashboard or at these figures. Thank you for that, and I will jump to the questions. We have quite a few. I don't know if we will manage to answer them all, but let's start with the first one. It's not directed to someone, so if you have the answer, just go and answer it. So it's an interesting one. Which are good book recommendations related to analytics and reporting? Any good book you can recommend?
For HR colleagues, there's a book called Datadriven HR, which is really a good start to build the analytics capability. And what I use the most nowadays is storytelling with data. I'm also trying to enhance myself in my data visualization. So anyone interested in that part can check it for sure.
Thank you. I think really, I think we also spoke about it that, as you said, storytelling with data or visualizing data, that you see a picture and you immediately understand, the importance, what it's all about. I think this is definitely an important skill, storytelling with data and data-driven HR. Thank you for these recommendations. Another question was, could you highlight the importance of data with respect to a startup and SME? I think maybe Ebony, that would be rather
I figured.
Yeah.
I think, people have a stereotype, right? That corporates are slow and startups are fast, and that, all of a sudden, at a startup, people just know what to do. And there's this kind of picture of Steve Jobs and his black turtleneck and, just running around crunching data and knowing what to do with every step. But I think the major driver is the culture of the individual organization around data. So you can be in a corporate with well-established, you have your processes, you have your dashboards, but you can't force people to actually read them, right? So whether data is actually used in everyday situations is a function of the culture of that organization, regardless of the size or the stage of development. So at Marley Spoon, for example, before we had access to our data warehouse and, Looker, which is what we used Google Sheets. So it was manual, it wasn't pretty, it was, very basic graphs, but we used those because it was worth it to have teams actually use the information that's available to them to drive, to drive decision making and conversations around problem solving. So, yeah.
Thank you. So I think what you're saying is also it doesn't really matter if it's like a big system or you have a whole software behind it, but it's really the just doing it, the mindset. Yeah, exactly. The mindset. That's the topic of today. Next question is, how can we foster a data-driven mindset for employees and make them see the benefits of using personal insights provided by data analysis tools to improve their work behaviors? So how can we make employees see the benefits of using personal insights provided by data analysis tools to improve their work behaviors?
We use a lot of the employee data in terms of balancing the work-life balance and their well-being, especially now in the last couple of years. Most companies started to adapt that kind of tools, which shows the employees' own work behaviors, right? The email, how many emails you get, how the work patterns, how many meetings you are having, etc. So it analyzes all the work patterns for the employee and provides some suggestions. So this is one way we also use in Ericsson. Shares these analytics with the employees every week so they can plan and manage their time and agendas in an effective way. So this is really working here in a good way. That's the thing that came to my mind.
Thank you. Liudmila, you wanted to add something?
Yes, I might have a slightly different take on this because I believe that one of the good approaches of making data acceptable is actually using data to simplify recurring processes. So if something has to be taken up again and again, any way to automate it is something that immediately takes the burden of your employee. And as a rule, automated processes can be simply measured because there are statistics that you collect week for week. So simply by providing that level of automatization, and it doesn't have to be something sophisticated. It can be some workflow which takes away a necessity to send something manually from your employee. and just making sure that workflow is being sent on a regular basis and checking that KPI is something that incredibly increases the acceptance for data in general on organization when it's becoming a trend, when everyone starts looking for ways to take out repetitive, non-value adding actions and replace them with automatized processes.
Thank you. So just bringing it to the day-to-day, back to bringing it just to a normality, right? Like to a normal procedure and doing it in the day-to-day. Another question we have is, what is an element that increases that transformation to a data-driven organization? Data lake, data catalog, self-service BI, master data, etc.
So I think this will depend a lot on the DNA of the organization and what has been used. Typically, the complexity of the data should be less than the complexity of the organization to have the data working properly. So for a large corporation, data lake probably will be the solution because there is so much data available, collected at every step of the way, and it's necessary to bring it together. For small organizations, a much simpler tools will suffice just because you don't have that complexity in your organization already, or yet, rather to say.
Sorry, so there's no one clear answer. You say it very much depends on the organization, on the structure. Any other insights about that? What increases the transformation to a data-driven organization, if we put maybe aside what we talked about, the data mindset and the culture? Aysegul, were you saying something, or?
Yeah, I hope it's working now. I mean, of course, we also have the similar, data lakes, data models. There is actually a global data office which governs all data across Ericsson, and HR is just one part of it, because there's so many different levels of data that is managed globally, and for sure there are data domain boundaries, governances, data stewards. I mean, this is a complex thing, and in large corporations mainly, we certainly need such framework. And important point is like data lake, a central data lake, single source of truth, as mentioned. These are absolutely needed because you have to have data reliability to work with that. So absolutely critical things. These are the foundations and probably the hardest part, because we always talk about reporting dashboards, but there is something in the beginning. You have to form your data structure, data models, data governance, privacy compliance. So you have to have mechanisms to govern all that. So yeah, I think it's absolutely a must, and it starts with that, and only after that you can start talking about reporting, cultures, and how to use that in the organization.
Actually, thank you, and I totally agree. And we actually are planning one of our next webinars will be with VP data and CDOs of organizations to speak about exactly that, like the structure of data and all these more maybe technical questions and how to set up, let's say, the data organization in a company. This is something we will definitely talk about in the future. We also have some more questions around these topics about data protection and things like that, which I think we will not have time for today, but we will definitely talk about when we will have a separate webinar exactly about this topic. And we're exactly on time. And I would love to thank you so much, Aysegul, Ebony, Liudmila. Thank you so much for joining in this very interesting and insightful conversation. Thank you to the audience. Thank you for the interest. Thank you for registering. And we'll be really happy to see you again in the future. And let's stay data-driven and have a data-driven mindset. Thank you very, very much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
It was a pleasure. Thank you, everyone.
Have a good day. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.